Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Security Token Insiders Interviews. My name is Kyle Sonlin, and it's my pleasure to introduce Samson Mao, who's going to be joining me. We're going to be talking everything security tokens. He's got a ton of experience in the space. Samson, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle. It's great.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience in the space. Could you give us a quick background on your work in the blockchain space, as well as your foray into security tokens?
Sure. So my name is Samson Mo. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Blockstream and also the CEO of Pixelmatic and the creator of Infinite Fleet. So my background originally was game development, and my first foray into the blockchain crypto space was as the operator of BTC China. So I was the COO there, so running an exchange and mining pool, and promoting Bitcoin as much as I could.
That's fascinating. So you were really working in Bitcoin. What led you into the world of compliance and real world assets and bringing them on chain?
Yeah, so I think the key here is looking at where the industry is going to go. Being an exchange operator and talking to a lot of different exchanges, there is this underlying concern, which is, what are we going to list? And people want to list things that are good. And there's a lot of garbage out there. Like there's a lot of altcoins, and there's a lot of tokens that may or may not be securities. And that just isn't a scalable method to advance the industry, right? You can keep listing governance tokens that are built on more governance tokens on more governance tokens, but in the end, that's all going to crumble. Like if you look at the market cap of crypto assets over the past 10 years, everything kind of goes down over time because there's no real value there. And if you think about what the future is going to be, that's not it. It's going to be security tokens. It's going to be securities. It's going to be companies that actually create value, deliver ROI to investors, and are actually making something useful. And being able to tokenize that, I think, solves a lot of problems. So if you think of Bitcoin as fixing money, well, security tokens fix finance, general capital markets and everything. It's basically a reformation of capital markets. Everything we have right now is just incredibly broken. And I don't think there's a real way to work behind the scenes to fix it. You just have to throw that all away and rebuild from scratch. And that's kind of what we're all trying to do here with security tokens.
Yeah, I think you make a great point because when we look at the real benefit of leveraging a security token as opposed to the public market equivalent, I think that one of the biggest opportunities, one of the coolest pieces of it is the flexibility of the investment vehicle and how you can structure the opportunity, right? Because you don't necessarily have to fit it into this box that the stock market requires. You don't have to necessarily follow those same rules, which may not be beneficial for any specific investment to fit that box. There could be another opportunity that makes more sense, which leads me into kind of, I think, where I want to kick off our conversation here, which is around the two specific security tokens you've been very heavily involved in here, which are both kind of unique in their structure that wouldn't necessarily fit into that box that we're kind of describing here. So maybe we'll start with Blockstream because that's you've had quite a few headlines with the company. It's been incredibly successful, and you've launched the Blockstream mining node. So could you talk a little bit about Blockstream first, and then we'll dive into the node after?
Sure. So Blockstream is a Bitcoin infrastructure company. And what that means is we're just building on Bitcoin at all levels. We're working on the Bitcoin protocol, Lightning Network, the Liquid Network, which is a Bitcoin sidechain. We're doing Bitcoin mining. We're one of the largest miners in North America. We have Blockstream satellite, which is broadcasting the Bitcoin blockchain through satellites in geosynchronous orbit around the Earth. We have wallets. We have a ton of stuff. Basically, everything we're doing is building on Bitcoin. And you can look at Blockstream as a company that's trying to augment Bitcoin and make it more robust and scalable.
So, okay, so let's dive into the different pieces. So you're working in the Bitcoin ecosystem quite heavily, and you mentioned Liquid, and this is a Bitcoin sidechain. What is a sidechain? Why do you need a sidechain? And does that mean that sidechain is better than the Bitcoin blockchain?
No, so a sidechain is really just a separate blockchain that's anchored to another chain, and it does not have its own currency. So if you look at every other blockchain project out there, they have their own token. They have their own, token that's either sold through an ICO or whatnot. And Liquid just doesn't have that. The native currency of Liquid is Bitcoin. You peg in Bitcoin. So you lock it up on the main chain and you unlock it on the side chain. So if there's 21 million Bitcoins, you could only ever have 21 million Bitcoins within Liquid too. And it just goes to show you can do a lot of things without having to launch your own token and your illegal security offering. You can just build on Bitcoin permissionlessly. And Liquid is just one instance of a sidechain, but there are other ones out there like RSK. And potentially there can be more in the future. But for Liquid, the main focus is settlement, inter-exchange settlement. So when we launched it, it was really just to move funds from one exchange to another. And then we started seeing assets being issued because we have the capability in Liquid to support assets natively. So unlike something like Ethereum, where they're kind of bolting it on with a smart contract, assets in Liquid are native. So if you think of Bitcoin as having one asset type, which is Bitcoin, Liquid just has assets natively. So you can have USDT, you can have a Canadian dollar stablecoin, you can have a Japanese yen stablecoin, a euro stablecoin, you can have a game currency, NFTs, and these are all native to the protocol. So it functions far more seamlessly and frictionlessly than in other blockchains. And I think Liquid is good for building security tokens on, because there's no question, like, is the underlying base layer a security in and of itself that wasn't registered, or the SEC may crack down on in the future? You don't have that possibility because it's just Liquid. There's no ICO, there's no nothing. It's just a chain that's anchored to Bitcoin that provides additional functionality.
So do you feel that that's really the key piece for if someone was considering issuing a security token, that the compliance of the underlying chain is the biggest concern? Or are there other pieces that Liquid also applies in terms of facilitating a security token?
Yeah, definitely. I think the other part is the confidential assets and confidential transactions. So within Liquid, every transaction is by default confidential. You can do unblinded transaction, but natively it's like by default confidential. And the benefit of that is really to prevent front running. Like you see those the bots on Twitter, right, that are saying, so-and-so moved $1 billion onto so-and-so exchange, or so-and-so moved 1,000 Bitcoin to this exchange. So you can watch the on-chain traffic and front run them, which you can't do with Liquid because the transactions are confidential. And this also has the added benefit of allowing people to transact privately with one another peer-to-peer as well. There's a ton of benefits with Liquid. The other one is atomic swaps. So you can construct a transaction in Liquid which executes atomically. So that means it either happens or it doesn't happen. It's just all at once or none. So when we want to trade a security token, we can do it in that fashion. So there's no counterparty risk. I don't need to send you the funds first and then you send me the security token later. And what that does is facilitate these secondary or OTC markets, which makes the market far more efficient and more liquid. Just the permissionless nature means you can always trade with someone else. You don't have that problem with the Robinhood and GameStop, right? Where they can stop you from trading. You just would trade direct with your counterparty and just disregard the platform if that platform is starting to become a burden.
Right. Okay. So we dived into some real technicals there, and that's pretty interesting. So we have the Liquid network, which is the base layer for a security token to be issued from a technical perspective. Let's talk about the Blockstream mining node. This is your application, or one of the first applications of a security token being issued on this Liquid network or the Liquid blockchain. Can you talk a little bit about what the Blockstream mining node is and how'd you come up with it? Where'd you formulate this idea?
Right. So I think it was Adam Back's idea. He wanted to find a way to bring together assets on Liquid with our mining operation. So the thinking was we can tokenize our hash rate and make it a security token. And this is done with our partner Stoker, which is based in Luxembourg. So we're using a Luxembourg securitization vehicle to accomplish this. So one Blockstream mining node was sold for 200,000 euros, and it has 2,000 terahash or 2 petahash of hash rate behind it. So when you buy a Blockstream mining node or BMN, you're basically buying hash rate. And that hash rate will mine Bitcoin over a 3-year period. And at the end of that 3-year period, you can call it maturity, then you get the Bitcoin that is mined. So if you think about it, the Blockstream mining node, when you start it, it's like all hash rate. And over the 3-year period, that hash rate slowly transforms into Bitcoin. And then, anywhere during that process, you can sell it to someone else. You can sell it OTC. You could sell it on a security token exchange. And it allows for people to have access to this. And because it is done in Luxembourg under European law, we will be able to get an ISIN for it too, which opens the door for even more possibilities. You can kind of straddle between the security token exchanges and even traditional exchanges too. They can list it, brokerages can hold it, and it just totally just changes the playing field.
That's interesting. So each one is $200,000. So there's no fractional ownership beyond that, right? Each individual node is one token that you can't split any further.
You can split it down to 0.01 BMN. And that's what a lot of the OTC trades are going for, like people buying it at the 2,000 euro mark.
Right. Okay. And so if I owned a BMN token, am I given an update on how much hash power has been converted into Bitcoin at any given time so that I can value where that token should be at? Or how are the market dynamics going to work, do you think, over the period?
Yeah, so you can look on blockstream.com/finance/BMN, and there's a dashboard there that you can watch and see how much Bitcoin is being mined. And I think for the secondary markets, what people are doing is calculating expected Bitcoin to be mined, how much Bitcoin is there already to kind of figure out the best market price. But once this is listed on a security token exchange, I think the price discovery will kick in and it'll be much easier to price them.
And this leads us into a great conversation around an exchange that you might be working with. We saw this great announcement from Bitfinex. They're going to be coming out and launching a security token exchange. They are licensed. They certainly come with a huge name behind them and a ton of users. Is that where you think that the future of these assets to be listed, especially in the European jurisdictions, are going to be coming from?
Yeah, it's definitely a major venue. And I think it may be underappreciated how big of a game changer this is. This could potentially allow Bitfinex Securities to eat the lunch of the London Stock Exchange, right? Like all the traditional trading venues are just too slow moving. And Bitfinex has a far superior tech stack. They're one of the most reliable cryptocurrency exchanges. And now they can take that tech infrastructure and apply it to security tokens. And if you do the security tokens correctly, then those can just be on Bitfinex Securities or on traditional exchanges too. So I think it's just a matter of time before this outstrips the traditional model. And the speed at which security tokens can function and grow is just limitless. Like if you look at the traditional securities markets, they're just trading on working hours, maybe 8 hours a day, and a lot of jurisdictions even less. And then obviously not on bank holidays and weekends, right? But if you look at just Bitcoin itself, we've accrued about 81 years of trading history in that 10-year period it's been trading. So that's just because it's trading 24/7 and
Right.
across every jurisdiction. And security tokens will be able to do the same, right? There's no reason for the markets to shut off at certain times of the day or for people in certain time zones to be disadvantaged versus people in another time zone.
I agree, because the beauty of the security token is the idea of this global access, right? We're talking about, it's ridiculous to me that Facebook can have, call it 3 billion users, and yet not all of them can actually own their asset. I've talked about this before, but having anyone be able to participate and invest from around the world and engage with each other in one centralized financial market is the most efficient of markets to be able to trade and exchange assets. That it's fascinating for me to see all of these different security token exchanges coming live in all of the different jurisdictions, but all embracing the same regulations and the same standards, to the point where we've never seen a market even come together in this size in a decentralized system like that, but yet still all supporting the same standards. So it's been fascinating to see.
Yeah, the tech stack is just far superior. Like if I don't know, in Canada, we have Quest Trade. And if you compare that to, Bitfinex's offering and their tech, it's a world apart. You can't compare it at all. The old world is clunky, cumbersome, slow, and then you have this super streamlined, super efficient, high performance system. There's just no way to compare the two. So I really think there's a chance for them to really capture a lot of market share.
Yeah, well, I think that dual opportunity that you mentioned is going to be a key piece as well, right? Having a security token, but then also providing a bridge into the traditional markets to start bringing more of those people, converting more believers into the system. We're seeing a similar thing happening with Merge and their relationship with OTC markets. Now that's creating an opportunity for more listings that are coming, cross listing in that regard. Even T0 with Overstock's digital dividend coming out and forcing a lot of the Overstock shareholders to embrace security tokens. That I think that unlike what we've seen from the cryptocurrency industry, the security token industry is kind of providing that bridge to Wall Street and creating this opportunity to either adapt or die, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, pretty much.
So let's talk about your second security token you've been involved in, and one that I think is even a little bit more fun to talk about for a retail investor. We're talking about Infinite Fleet. So can we talk first about what Infinite Fleet is?
Yeah, so Infinite Fleet is a sci-fi MMO game where you control a fleet of ships. The business model is really selling ships. You could think of a ship like a skin, like in Fortnite, and you want to collect all the different ones out there. You can deploy your fleets, you can control them, or you can send them on AFK missions. So you can actually build up an army or multiple fleets of spaceships and then send them out to do different tasks. And as a player, you're defending against an alien threat, and you can form guilds, alliances, and build things in the galaxy. So if you think of a RTS like StarCraft, you're kind of base building and resourcing and fighting at the same time. In Infinite Fleet, it's more like a persistent world. The things that you build just stay there. If you build a defense platform, it's still there unless it gets destroyed. You can build a mining station. You can send a mining fleet out to collect resources, and then you can fight when you want to fight when you're at your computer. But you can manage all of this from your phone. So this is the goal, that you kind of have this persistent world where you can manage this economy and everything like that. And the game itself is interesting because we're replacing the game currency with a crypto token. So in like World of Warcraft, you have World of Warcraft Gold. But in Infinite Fleet, you'll have INF, which is a crypto token that's earned through social experiences and social play. So massive raids or group activities like that. And that's really just to prevent farming of the currency. So to farm the currency, you play the game. And then all the ships in Infinite Fleet are NFTs. So the point of doing that is that you can use that game currency and trade with other players for things like ships. And you can do those atomic swaps that I mentioned. So you can have this trustless exchange, which prevents people from getting scammed. Like in a lot of MMO games, it's like, I want to buy gold, and then you send them a payment on PayPal, and then they don't show up with your gold. So this kind of fixes that. It changes a lot of the gameplay and guild dynamics too, because with Liquid, it's basically similar to Bitcoin. You can use those same systems as Bitcoin. So a guild could create a multi-sig wallet to hold their funds. And you might have heard this before, but there's been instances of games in the MMO space where someone will infiltrate a guild and then steal the money from the main guild account because they're keeping it in one user account, right? So I think it's an interesting way to apply a lot of the technology that we built up around Bitcoin and use it in a game.
That's tremendous. It really starts to create this metaverse application where I'm really big into this idea of the metaverse right now, where everything that you do in the game, since it's a crypto token, these are NFTs, you could pull out and create wealth for yourself outside of that actual ecosystem as well, potentially, as we've seen with games like Axie Infinity or others, where individuals are actually making a living by playing the game without necessarily being a professional, right? You don't have to be an esports player to be able to actually create opportunities for yourself and ways to actually make real world resources that you could use inside or outside of the game. I think that's fascinating. So
for Infinite Fleet, we have a security token too, and that's called EXO. And this is where it's getting into that the space you're mentioning, which is a different model. So with the XO token, you get a profit share. So as the game publisher, Exordium, will earn revenues off of activities in the game. And you as a player can actually invest in the publishing entity and get a return on that. So you can buy stuff in the game, play with it, enjoy it, but you can also invest in it because it is a security token. We have a prospectus, so you can invest from $100. So let's say you're an MMO player and you want to play this game for 5 years. It makes sense. You could also put $100 and invest in it. Like imagine when Blizzard was starting World of Warcraft, you could invest $100 into World of Warcraft too, and pay your $15 a month subscription. So you can basically have your cake and eat it too. But yeah, that's a new model where you have a profit share. It's like equity. So if there is a liquidation event and one day, I don't know, Electronic Arts decides to buy Exordium, then everyone holding Exo token will take part in that liquidity event. But it's really democratizing finance, which is kind of the core of what we're trying to accomplish with security tokens, right? Make things more equitable, more fair, and really allow people to participate freely. So investors in XO, we haven't really gone out to VCs and pitched to A16Z, say, hey, do you guys want to invest? We're just trying to get players to invest and the community to be our investors, because we think that is the most interesting model here. Getting some VCs to put money in and taking equity is not very interesting. I think there's a new paradigm here that we can push forward, which is a closer relationship between the company and the community and the investors. You see that also with INX, right? So there's actually 3 security tokens I'm involved with. It's BMN, XO, and INX, the exchange. So it's similar for them. They have a very strong community, and the community really believes in the project, the team, the vision. And similar to XO, their security token also has a profit share. I think their profit share is 40%, where ours is 20%. But it's different models for different kinds of projects. But yeah, it's an interesting way to form this relationship. And if you're holding a security token, you're kind of holding bearer shares, right? It's not in custody at some brokerage or some third party that can rehypothecate your stuff. So I think it fixes a lot of problems, and it's a very interesting shift in how things are done in capital markets.
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, and I've been on record before talking about how I'm not a huge fan of the profit sharing model as opposed to a revenue sharing model. Can I have your thoughts just on the differences between what those two look like, how that affects the companies, and what that looks like for investors? Do you feel that the profit share, I mean, it's great. I actually learned for the first time just now, there's this liquidation preference, which I think is fascinating and is very fair to investors. But what's the line of reasoning behind doing a profit share as opposed to a revenue share?
I don't know. It was just something we decided early on. I think we wanted to follow the INX model, which is profit share. It's just simpler because I think as you're trying to grow these projects, you want to reinvest into the company too, right? Not just strip it all out and share everything. So it makes more sense, I think, for me we share the profits rather than the revenues,
right?
Because revenues will be reinvested back into grow everything, grow the pie to be bigger.
Right. Interesting. Cool. And then, the other interesting thing about a security token is that since this is still a private company and this is a very new industry, there's no regulation, or there's very little regulation around disclosure requirements. So Heike, what is your plan to, manage investor relations with shareholders, with investors that are passionate about the project? They want to know what's the profitability looking like, when are we going to see dividends and things like that paying out? What's your plan to keep investors privy to what's going on?
Yeah, so I think there will be a fair amount of disclosure because we are going for a Reg A plus filing in the US. And I believe there's a proper set of discourse that has to happen when you are doing a Reg A filing. So there will be a fair amount of transparency to people about what we're spending on and how much the profit share is when we pay the dividends out.
Right, interesting. So that's great. So you're actually leveraging crypto, NFTs, and security tokens all within this online MMO world.
Yeah, trying to.
And it's all happening. It all will happen through the liquid sidechain.
Yes, I think liquid is the best option when you're trying to build something scalable and sustainable.
Right. No, exactly. Because that's a fascinating conversation about how it's more scalable than other solutions. How does the user experience translate for an individual? Do they're, with Ethereum, people are used to paying gas fees, even though they're incredibly high. Do they transact on Liquid using a similar setup, or is it different? Is it just all back end? They don't need to deal with any of it. How does it work with Liquid from a user experience perspective?
Right. So there's two parts to it, I think. There is a liquid network transaction. So let's just use Infinite Fleet as an example. If you're an investor and you get the XO token, if you wanted to trade that with another investor, you still need to pay network fees. But the network fees in Liquid are basically Bitcoin. And I think the network fees are something like 20 cents right now, but it is based on like a Satoshi or a liquid Satoshi, so it's the smallest denomination. So I think it's 0.01 Satoshis per V byte. So the transaction structure and costing is very similar to Bitcoin, actually. So yeah, you do need some liquid Bitcoin to transact in Liquid Network. It's kind of a DDoS, anti-DDoS measure. In terms of the other part, like let's say transacting the INF game currency, the plan is that we can use something like Liquid Taxi, which is we will pay the fees for the players. So there are a lot of games out there trying to build on blockchain tech, and I think they put the blockchain aspect first and foremost. So it's like, buy some of this token, connect your wallet into the game, and then you can buy stuff in the game, and then you can play the game. But for our model, it's more Bitcoin non-custodial. So when you create an account, these systems are not deployed yet. We're still working on them, but this is how it will work. You would create your account for the game, and you'll be generating a non-custodial wallet. And then when you earn INF, that will go to your non-custodial wallet. And because it is on Liquid, we can actually pay some of the transaction fees for you. Let's say you top up your account with dollars. We'll just pay those network fees for you. So as a player, you don't need to worry about gas fees and buying some crypto token off an exchange before you can access it, because our plan really is to be a Trojan horse to get these crypto assets into the hands of players. And I don't think ramming it down their throats is the best way to do it. The best way is that it is optional. We make it as seamless as possible so that you don't even need to know it's there. But if you want to, like, use it without interacting with us, like without us paying the fees for you, then you can do so. And it is permissionless. Like you hold your INF tokens in your wallet, and we can't access that for you. So it's kind of a way to bring this to the masses, I think, by not shocking them with complexity and really convoluted pathways of how to get and manage their crypto tokens.
A focus on simplicity and user experience, I think, is very welcome in the crypto community at this point.
Yeah, I don't think that's a selling point to tell someone, go buy some token and then play the game. I think it's just going to turn people away. You can't get mass market that way.
So based on the game so far, you've been successful in the fundraise for Infinite Fleet. I know that you're opening a new tranche coming up soon. What's the status of the game at this point? Are you looking to close this fundraising round before launch, or is there a beta or something coming out that users are able to access yet? Or what's your timeline look like for the launch of the game and when people can start interacting in the MMO?
Yeah, the game is already in alpha. So if players have bought a ship, they can access alpha. We send out golden tickets every week. We're just batching all the requests at this point so that we don't get overwhelmed with support. And if you're an investor, then you can also get access to the alpha. But you can really download the game, play with the ships that you've bought, and go and kill stuff and see other players flying around. So the game is in a playable state. I think there's a lot of other projects out there that are not in a playable state, but they're trying to monetize very heavily. And in terms of the fundraising, the plan is that we will finish this round. I think we're raising a total of 12. The plan is that this will finish before we go into beta next year, but there is a chance the US portion might take a bit more time because it is a security token. We're trying to go and do everything through regulated channels and and doing things in a proper way. So there's two components to the XO token. There's the EU XO token and the US XO token. So we should finish all of the fundraise for the EU token probably in the next couple months. And the US token, fingers crossed, we should also close that out sometime, if not this year, then early next year. But I think overall, we'll finish the fundraise more or less by Q1 next year at latest. But it's really not something we're rushing with, because like I said, we want the players and the community to be the stakeholders, not just like some VC company. We could probably do it really quickly that way, but we're taking the way to get as many people on as we can and invested in the project.
So that's interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit more. You've got two different, are they going to be separate tokens due to compliance? Like if when both fundraise is complete, will they be fungible, the EU token and the US token, or will they always kind of have to be separate because of the legal differences?
So the tokens themselves will be separate. And if you're an investor that could hold both, and then you could come to Exordium and say, I want to change from XO US to XO EU, and we'll just switch that for you. But the key is that you are qualified to hold both, right? Or it would make sense for you to switch. Like if you're if you're not able to trade in the US, then it doesn't make sense for you to hold the US token, right?
Right. So that's a very interesting structure. I don't know if the security token industry has seen a kind of a bucketed vehicle like that in a couple different jurisdictions. Do you think, I certainly have a bias being here in the United States, and most of the clients that we work with are US based. Do you see that as kind of that's the best process for an issuer coming from outside of the United States to get access to both types of investors, is to essentially bucket the asset into two different vehicles like that?
I think it is one option. I think that's the option we chose just because it would be easier and less costly, but there is like a Reg S, right? And I think INX is Reg S, and you can basically use one token everywhere, but it's also more costly. So there's different trade-offs. And I think Reg S also is more time consuming too. If you listen to some of the podcasts that the INX guys did, it's like, we spent years and years on this. So that's, it's really just a decision based on cost and time.
Yeah. With INX as well, I'm sure that you are just as privy as I am to what went on there, but they also filed publicly here in the United States, which definitely takes quite a while as opposed to the Reg S, which is the private exemption. So yeah, they definitely went through quite a few hoops and ladders. They filed an F1 or something along those lines as well. But that's fascinating, and I think that as you said, that this structure may be one that could be very cost effective, or at least more so than some of the other options. But let's talk about your experience using the Stoker platform. We know Arnab very well. He's joined our security token speakeasy chats before, and we've got a good relationship with him. How has it been working with that platform? Not only them personally, but just raising money through a security token in the EU, and what that whole system has looked like. How has that experience been for you and your team?
It's been great. Like we love working with Arnab. We're working with Arnab from multiple companies. So Exordium is working with the Stoker group for the XO token, and then Blockstream is also working with Stoker for the BMN. So we spent a lot of time with Arnab and Tobias, and I don't know if they're getting sick of us yet, but we like working with them. I think they're a very clever bunch, and they're very sharp. They know the ins and outs of all the regulatory hurdles. They're able to navigate all of that very deftly. They're very much a very scrappy startup. Like they know how to get things done and do them efficiently. So if you're looking to do a security token raise, I definitely suggest reaching out to the Stoker team and just talking to them and seeing how they can help you, because they've helped us a lot.
That's great, and I think that especially from a European perspective, and at least outside of the U.S., having some of those platforms that can drive this opportunity forward and create the path for a more scalable solution for more and more issuers to continue to follow in the wake of what you guys have established is going to be crucial in order to finding that more mainstream adoption. In terms of the Exordium or the XO token and BMN, maybe to a lesser extent since the minimum investment was much higher, Who can invest? Is there, in terms of what regulations and compliance is there around who's able to buy in? Is it just a monetary limit, or in the US there's accredited versus non-accredited investors? What does that look like for the tokens that you're offering?
Right. So I think Arnab could probably speak better towards that than I can, but I'll
Not
tell you
legal
my
advice,
understanding.
for sure.
Yeah. So for the BMN to be a qualified investor, you need to be able to meet the minimum threshold, which is that 200,000 euro amount. For EXO, because we have a prospectus in place, then pretty much anyone can invest, and we just set the minimum threshold to $100. So it is a pretty simple and straightforward process. You just register on Stoker, complete the KYC process, and then if you are qualified, then you can just go at it. And once you are in the Stoker system, then you can invest in pretty much anything. So I know that there are people that invested in Infinite Fleet first, and then the BMN came out, and they're already whitelisted and set up on Stoker, so they could buy the BMN OTC. So it's kind of developing this this little ecosystem there, which is quite good. But it takes time to get this going, and to really get security tokens and accelerate that mega trend, you really need all three parts. You need the technology like Liquid, you need the trading venues and the issuance platforms like Stoker, like Bitfinex Securities, and you need the regulatory part, right? Like that, I think the regulatory hurdles have come down quite a bit. If you look at the speed at which Stoker is able to execute, it's pretty good. Like I can't complain at all. Like to get things through, to get things approved, it's not a lengthy, arduous process. It's quite efficient now. So I think with these three components in place, we can see this ecosystem grow, and it's just going to keep on growing because, like you can see, like investing in one security token opens up the door and makes it easier for you to invest in another. So as things come on and enter this this ecosystem, it just will grow exponentially.
I like the words you use there of the ecosystem, right? And building this very positive feedback loop in terms of building this community from the different pieces of the puzzle, as well as building a stronger connection from the issuer to the investor, as you were talking about earlier, which is really the value of the crowdfund and this ability to engage with your users. And I think that actually pivots well into maybe the final piece of this puzzle where Bitfinex comes in. And we've been in this security token space for a while here at Security Token Market. And I remember back in 2017, 2018, thought leaders, including one of our favorites, Jesus Rodriguez, would talk a lot about liquidity. And this idea that liquidity is not like a light switch in terms of you just turn it on and it's going to create these efficient capital markets, right? It's something that's built over time. And so with that being said, security tokens have always been viewed as something that will never be as liquid and X, Y, and Z. How do you see that playing out with something like Bitfinex in terms of creating a liquid market for these trading assets? Is that a priority for you? Is that something that you're concerned about? Where do you stand on this idea of liquidity for securities?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because one of the common criticisms of security tokens are they're illiquid, right? But they can be very liquid in a very short amount of time. Like you compare it with any equity investment, and there's just no comparison, right? Like you'll never have that level of liquidity with equity. So definitely a tokenized security is going to outpace that. And with venues like Bitfinex Securities, I just see the liquidity growing very rapidly. Like we already have OTC trades for the BMN. Once the BMN is listed on Bitfinex Securities, then it should just ramp up very, very quickly. And Bitfinex they're very good at growing their exchange platform and ecosystem and liquidity. Like Bitfinex, not Bitfinex Securities, but Bitfinex proper. I mean, they're just a massive pool of liquidity. Like everybody trades on Bitfinex.
I appreciate you taking the time today to talk through a bunch of the amazing developments going on with you and your team. We can kind of close it out by saying, if people want to stay up to date with all this stuff, they want to participate, where are the best ways that somebody could get involved with all the things that you're building? Where should we direct the traffic? Where should everybody be hyping you guys up?
Yeah, so I think for Blockstream, just follow at Blockstream. We'll generally post everything on our Twitter handle, the same handle on Facebook and LinkedIn. And then for Infinite Fleet, just same thing, at Infinite Fleet, and then on Facebook it's Infinite Fleet, and then on LinkedIn, I think you can check out Pixelmatic or Exordium. But generally, everything we do, we post updates on these social channels regularly.
And you're currently fundraising, right? So these are still only for international investors, no US at this time?
Yes, that's correct. We're planning to open up a new tranche for the DMN soon. And then the EXO tokens are still available on Stoker, and soon it will be available on Bitfinex Securities.
Fantastic. Well, once it becomes available on Bitfinex, maybe we should circle back and have a deeper discussion once some of these progress things happen. I really appreciate having you on. It's great to meet you finally, Samson, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Cal.